Today's the chapter 14 review day. Well, let's talk about the test topics here a little bit. So you should, if I give you a rational function, be able to find the domain, vertical asymptotes, remove discontinuities, zeros, y-intercepts, other asymptotes. This sounds a lot like the homework quiz, right? It's basically a rehash of that same question. You should be given a graph. You should be able to write down the end behaviors using that limit notation. If I give you all the information, the vertical asymptotes, remove discontinuities, zeros, y-intercepts, other asymptotes, end behaviors, you should be able to sketch a possible graph of that function from it. I'll have 3 solving rational equation problems, 2 solve rational inequality problems, 1 partial fraction setup only, and then 1 partial fraction solve. That'll be the test. Going and looking at the review packet, I don't know that this is really that very representative of what I'm asking you to do for the test anymore. So I'm not going to make this required part of the homework, so you can do it or not. Okay with that? I'll update that on that assignment on My Notre Dame to no longer include the review packet. And then I think we picked the test date for the 4th, which is Thursday, because I think Tuesday was a bad day for APs. Is that right? Okay. So are you taking an AP during that time, or is it just like we have something else going on later that day where it's going to be a mess? I don't remember. Psych is on Tuesday, but it doesn't overlap this period, so you'll still be here in class, right? Okay. Yeah, for macroeconomics. That's okay. We'll figure that out. If you wanted to do it on Tuesday, that'd be okay.
I have one like Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday that week. Or Monday, Tuesday, the next week too. So I'll figure it out.
Okay, you let me know.
No,
You let me know.
okay.
It's not a big deal.
Yeah.
I get it. Okay. So we'll plan on that for Thursday. Everybody's cool with that plan? On Tuesday, we'll just start the next stuff or whatever, like we usually do if we have to bump around the test day to make it a little bit more palatable for you guys. Does everybody feel okay with like the test format, what I mean by these titles and all that? Okay. Do you guys have questions from homeworks or other things that you want to talk about? Okay. Yeah, Casey? 74. Is that the partial fraction 74?
Yeah.
Okay. You just pull that up. All right. So this one wants the partial fraction decomposition. Keep in mind that since the denominator has constants A and B in it, the final answer is probably going to have constants A and B kind of scattered throughout, and that's okay. So when I set up my partial our partial fraction decomposition, I'm going to have cap A over x minus A plus cap B over x minus B.
Oh, that's it?
Yep.
Oh.
Since they're both linear and to the first power, that's it. That's my setup. So we'll go ahead and multiply both sides by x minus A times x minus B to clear the fractions. So 3 is equal to A times x minus B. B is going to equal, and then we have B times x minus A. I FOIL through, or not FOIL, distribute. Okay. So the system I would write, for the variables, I have A plus B is going to equal 0. And then for the constants, we have negative A plus negative B should equal 3. If I try to solve this system, well, let's just do it real quick, huh? Oops. Matrix, yeah, that's fine. Edit. Oh my goodness, guys. This is not right. Mr. Kulik, hold on. It's going to be, that is all going to be part of my constant. There we go. All right. So if I try to solve this system, I'm not going to be able to use a calculator because I have these non-numeric constants floating around through it, the A and the B, or the lowercase a and b. So I'm just going to solve this using like substitution. So I know that like A is equal to negative B by just rearranging the first equation. So I can drop that in. I have negative B times lowercase b minus B times A has to equal 3. So if I factor the B out, I have B minus A equals 3. So B is going to equal 3 divided by B minus A. And then if I go and I substitute that in, then I get A is going to equal negative 3 over B minus A. So I'd say then that I have negative 3 over B minus A over X minus A plus positive 3 over B minus A over X minus B. And I hate the fraction stacked on top of fraction there. So I'm just going to multiply by a reciprocal. So I have negative 3 over B minus A times X minus A plus positive 3 over B minus A times X minus B. And that should be our final answer there. Giselle. From, okay, the chap, okay, yep. That's a solving problem or something then, right?
Yeah,
Inequality, sure. So Since this is rational, there's two things I care about. I care about the zeros and I care about the discontinuities. The discontinuities are easy. That should just be -3 and +1, right? Because those will give me zero denominators in the problem. To solve the zero, or to find the zeros, that'll take a little bit more work. I'm going to set up that equation where it's equal to 0. So I'll just multiply by the least common denominator. That'll give me 2 times x minus 1 minus 1 times x plus 3 equals 0. And then if I distribute things through, that gives me 2x minus 2 minus x minus 3 equals to 0. So x minus 5 equals 0. So x equals 5. If I set up my sign diagram then, the boundaries are going to be -3, +1, and +5. So I know right away that the discontinuities get open circles. Because this is a greater than or equal to inequality, the 5 is going to get a filled circle. And then I'll just pick some test values. So -4, 0, 2, 6. And then I'll just do the test values. I'm going to do this in the calculator since I just don't have two things multiplied together. I'm going to have like two fractions. And it's just like, I'm going to pass on the mental math with fractions at 8:03 in the morning today. It just, my brain doesn't feel up to that mental mathing. I don't think it'll be reliable. Okay. So I typed it into the y equals, and then I'm just going to do the substitute. So I'm doing vars, y vars, function, y1. And then I'm just going to plug the test values in. So I got a negative for the first interval. And then I got a positive for the second interval. And then I got a negative for the third interval. And I got a negative for the fourth interval. So we had negative, positive, negative, negative. Since this is greater than or equal to 0, the things I care about are here where it's positive and this one value that's equal to 0. So that's how I would write my answer. Is that okay?
Yes.
Sure thing. Anybody else? Sure. Let's just create some kind of graph real quick. Hi, Alexis. How are you? Oh my goodness, so many of these. And by so many, I really just mean 2. Oh, Rita and Grace, these are, you probably knew these were coming, huh?
Yeah, thank you.
You're welcome. So here's a graph, okay? I'm just going to call this graph y equals f of x, so it has a name. So, Christian, if I go and I look at this, I see 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 end behaviors, because there's 6 places where you'd have an arrow at the end of something on your graph, right? All right. So for A, I'd say this is the limit as x approaches something, f of x equals something. So that part's going to be the same for all of them. The x, I'm going to look at what direction is the x, or is the arrow pointing in the x direction at A? Negative infinity. So that's going to be down here, x approaching negative infinity. And I'm going to look at what y value is the arrow at A approaching or pointing towards. 0. Yep. That one looks good. And then if I go on to B, if I look at this one, again, I have limit x approaches something of f of x equals. So if I go and I look at what x coordinate is this arrow pointing towards? -4. But we also have this one down here pointing at -4, so we need some way to differentiate those. So the B is the left side of -4. The smaller values are on the left. So to indicate the left side, we're going to put a negative sign like in the exponent, like a superscript. And what y value is the arrow approaching? Great, positive infinity. And you don't need the positive sign there if you just wrote infinity, that's fine, right? There's nothing wrong with that. If I go down and do C, that's going to be the same thing as the previous one, except the x is approaching -4 from the right. So I'll put a plus sign in the exponent. And the arrow is pointing to which y coordinate? Negative infinity. You feel pretty good on this? Do we need to keep going? Okay. We could if we needed to, but you seem like you got the handle of it, so I'm going to stop, as it should be fairly easy from here, right? It's just understanding the notation so you can take what's in the picture and put it into symbols, which is not a big deal. Nothing complicated. Okay. Anybody else? Alrighty. I want to pass these homework quizzes back since it feels like this would be a good thing to get some feedback on before you have some questions. That's okay. That's not your fault. You didn't do it on purpose. I didn't see it. Before you have to do it on the test, so let me give these to you guys. Okay. Joey, pass this one to Holden. Joey, okay. Sal. Oh, Anna. Paul. Christian. Rita. Problem. I want to point out a couple of things from the homework quiz that I saw, well, consistent problems with, or like missed opportunities to make your life easier. So seemed a lot of us had trouble finding the y coordinate for the removable. All you need to do is plug the x value for the removal into the reduced function, and that'll give you the y coordinate. That's all you need to do. So I'm just going to say that. I don't think I probably need to work through that. I think just the words reminding you of how to do that, which would probably be enough. F, though, there's a legitimate shortcut that would make life much easier that I don't know that anybody in here took advantage of. So if you looked at F, you would have concluded that the other type of asymptote would be a slant asymptote, right? The oblique one or whatever verbiage you want to use. So you'd have to do some kind of division to get that. If we look at the original problem, you'd have to use polynomial division, right? Because you have a non-linear divisor. However, if you used the reduced problem, that will have the exact same slant asymptote as the original. If you use the reduced version, you could do synthetic division, which is like a whole heap easier. Rita, did you do that?
Yeah.
Okay. There was one person that did it then. So if you instead used this, I reduced. And it could have been that easy, right? Some of us tried to do the long division, got a little turned around in that. Some of us tried to do synthetic division with the quadratic. That's a non-starter. That's not salvageable. You can't get the correct answer to come out of that. You can only do synthetic division with a linear divisor. The good news is, though, when we reduced, that's what we had. So it was still eligible to do that. Giselle? Yeah, just the numerator. So I would do this factor by grouping when I have something with 4 terms. That's my first thing I would check. So I'm just going to start by trying to make 2 groups. From the first group, I notice I can take a greatest common factor of x squared. From the second group, I can take a greatest common factor of -1. If I compare the 2 things now, I notice that I have a greatest common factor of x plus 2. So if I factor that out, I have what's left, x squared minus 1. And the x squared minus 1 I recognize as a difference of 2 squares. That'll factor to x minus 1, x plus 1. Hopefully you kind of remember doing that last year in Algebra 2, the factor by grouping piece. Yeah, maybe not when you needed to remember, but hopefully we do remind us now a little bit. Otherwise, everybody okay with these guys? If you have questions about something, feel free to ask me or talk amongst yourselves, or go to your smart friend and be like, hey, what'd I do wrong here? Or like, what'd you get for this one? That's okay. If you want to come talk to me, that's okay too. No big deal. At this point, though, I think I'm going to get out of your way and let you just get crack-a-lacking on whatever is the highest priority math item for you today. Sound good? Okay. Reminder, test is Thursday. Tuesday, we're just going to start chapter 15 or whatever. So the removal discontinuity is the piece that crossed off when you factored and reduced.
Yeah.
So the x value should be -2, right? To get the y coordinate then, all you do is plug the -2 into the reduced problem, and you should get -3/4
Okay.
when you just simplify that stuff down or whatever. Does that feel okay?
Yeah.
Yep.